Hello everybody! I'm the Godzilla Reader, and welcome to another video in regards of Project Hybrid. And today, it's going to be intense. Today on Project Hybrid, I will do something that I actually announced in my last video in regards of my hybrid Basilisk. And this time, Basilisk will finally get the shot to actually fight someone. However, instead of fighting the Indominus 2.0, which, like I said in my last video, I practically moved on from that tournament, I'm gonna do something that I've seen quite a lot, although it doesn't seem to be a new trend now. And it's basically having my hybrid fight other people's hybrids. To me, it's an interesting step to take, and honestly, it kind of serves as a great aftermath after the original tournament of the Great Arab War. Especially since I don't think I will be joining other tournaments, because creating new hybrids would be even more difficult. Though, if I can find a tournament where I can use Basilisk again, I would be down for it. Also, here's the funny thing, originally when I had this idea, I only chose 5 hybrids to be pitted against Basilisk. Well, the number grew into 9 now, and yeah, there's now 9 hybrids that are pitted against Basilisk. And I don't know if I'll be able to include all of them in one video, so this hybrid face-off would most likely be a 2-part video. So before proceeding with the face-off, I guess that a little reintroduction of Basilisk wouldn't really hurt at all. So here is my hybrid, Torakismenos Drakos, which means armor dragon, but once again you can just call him Basilisk. Named after the deadly snake king from mythology. Basilisk is a ginormous reptilian hybrid, with a weight of 5 tons, a height of 3.5 meters when he's on 4 legs, and a length of 9 meters. He has 14 contributors, and yeah, this is gonna take way too long if I go over them. So, if you wanna know more about Basilisk, then I recommend watching this video, which is essentially the creation of Basilisk, and then watch this one, which is me modifying some of the contributors so that Basilisk works better. Alright, now that I got over that, how about we begin the face-off, shall we? Actually, wait, let me do this first before going to the face-off. Now, if you just came back from watching the 2 videos, then you would think that with all the contributors and how big he is, Basilisk would be an unstoppable monster. However, even if that's the case, Basilisk is obviously not invincible nor a perfect hybrid, as there are other hybrids that are essentially much more powerful than him and could defeat him no problem. In fact, why don't we do that first? How about we take a look at some of the hybrids that could easily beat Basilisk and that Basilisk won't really bother trying to fight. Starting with the obvious one.
Fuck this shit, I'm out.
Yeah, Samson is literally a lost cause. This colossal hybrid, created by a madly Mesozoic, is simply way too big for Basilisk to take on. Samson also has great armor and great weaponry, which would be difficult for Basilisk to even retaliate against. The only vulnerable parts of Samson are his legs, but even so, I don't think a simple bite would be enough to badly injure him. And even if Basilisk injected him with the venom, I don't think it would be effective either, because given how big Samson is, his metabolism would most likely reject the venom. So yeah, this is a confrontation that Basilisk might either die from trying to fight Samson, which is stupid, or might just retreat because what's the point? There is no point in trying to fight something titanic. And we're just getting started. Samson is not the only one that Basilisk would have a hard time trying to fight. This right here is Thorn Wall, an hybrid that was created by Gojirasaurus. This is another hybrid that is pretty big. However, it gets worse when the thing literally stands on its 2 legs. However, size isn't the only thing that Thorn Wall brings. Thorn Wall is extremely strong and even has sharp claws, which could be pretty devastating once it makes contact with the skin. With its size and strength, it could easily pin Basilisk down, and even grab him and finish him off with a bite. Oh, and this thing can also use tools. So yeah, not a good idea. Here is another hybrid that could be problematic for Basilisk as well. Dracopteryx vipera, aka Vincent. Another hybrid that is pretty big as well. Okay, seriously, how many giant hybrids are there? Anyways, aside from being big, Vincent brings 2 abilities that could certainly be problematic for Basilisk. For once, Vincent can literally fly. So yeah, this is something that could be used against Basilisk, as it would mean that Basilisk would have a hard time taking a bite out of him or even hit him with his tail. And because of his size, Vincent could easily overpower Basilisk, in a similar fashion to how some bird of prey hunt venomous snakes. However, the second ability is much more worse, and it's not the beak nor the talons, even though they could be devastating for Basilisk either way. Vincent can shoot boiling acid from 2 fangs from his upper jaw. Thanks to the speeding cobra and the bombardier beetle for contributing this ability, if Basilisk were to be hit in the eyes by this boiling acid, it would be extremely painful, and Basilisk would literally not be able to see after that. So yeah, Basilisk isn't winning that either. Then you got Gojirasaurus 2.0 by GMR and yeah, do I need to explain this even further? Alright, last one, and this one is actually pretty unexpected. This is Apollyon, arguably speaking one of the most dangerous hybrids out there. Now, you must be wondering, how is this thing extremely dangerous given how small it is compared to Indom 2.0 right now? Well, since the base genome of this thing is Meganera, an ancient dragonfly, this thing has fast reflexes and can easily dodge any strike with no problem. However, its speed isn't the only thing that is dangerous about Apollyon. The next dangerous thing about it is the fact that it will attack you in a swarm. With a complex social structure thanks to the fire and DNA, Apollyon will work effortlessly with its team and take down any giants no matter what. And the pain only begins when the Apollyons proceed to shoot harpoons made of a hard material that could easily pierce through anything. And what's even worse about these harpoons is that they are venomous. Now granted, with Basilisk's immune system from the Nile crocodile, there's a chance that he might resist the venom, but with how much he receives from the harpoons, and with how difficult it is for him to even land a hit on any of these Apollyons, yeah, this is a fight that would literally lead to no victory for him. So yeah, this hybrid created by Creature Archives is arguably speaking the most dangerous hybrids out there. And I mean quite literal. But yeah, you get the gist. Basilisk may be strong, but he's not powerful. So how about we begin this hybrid face-off with some of the hybrids that I picked, which Basilisk could have a chance against, starting with this one. Let's begin this hybrid face-off with this cool hybrid right there, named Damien. This is a hybrid that was created by my good friend Gojirasaurus, who he submitted to the Great Herbivore. Although, just like Basilisk, Damien got completely ignored as well. So I guess both of them are cool about it. But anyways, this real-life version of Diablo from Primal Rage is a pretty efficient combatant. Damien has 6 contributors, and it goes as follows. T-Rex as the base form, which would give the hybrid bulk and a powerful bite force. Ankole Watusi, which would give the hybrid large horns to defend itself. Carnotaurus, which would encourage the hybrid to use its horns. Brontomerus, which would give the hybrid strong leg muscles to contribute with the impact of the horns. Giganotosaurus, more specifically the version from Jurassic World Dominion, which would give Damien armor to take multiple strikes. And lastly, Ostrich, which would give Damien a strong immune system with both venom and diseases. Now, given that the base genome for Damien is the Tyrannosaurus Rex, it's most likely that he is taller than Basilisk. However, would that mean anything when it comes to a confrontation? Well, to start, Damien does have great armor and great weapons. His main weapons are mostly his crushing bite force and his horns. And his armor is obviously the ardent scales from the Giganotosaurus from Jurassic World Dominion, which would definitely be efficient to taking a lot of blows. Basilisk doesn't really have a powerful bite force, but thanks to the DNA of the Allosaurus, his bite would be efficient for bleeding damage. And thanks to the iron-coated teeth of Megalania, his teeth would slice through even the hardest flesh. Aside from his jaws, Basilisk has other weapons, like his horn for ramming impacts. His front claws are long thanks to the DNA of the Harpy Eagle, which would be efficient for slashing damage, and his tail, thanks to the Stegosaurus DNA. He has a Veganizer-like weapon, which would be pretty devastating upon impact. He does have durable skin, although the keratin scales of the pangolin would definitely improve on the armor even better. So, how would it go? Personally, I don't think Damien would have that much difficulty trying to kill Basilisk, since his weapons seem to be much more formidable than those of Basilisk. Damien's powerful bite force could most likely get past through Basilisk's hard skin, and even get past through the keratin scales of the pangolin. And with the horns, it would be pretty devastating if Basilisk gets impaled by them. Because of the hard scales of the Dominion Giga, Basilisk would probably have a hard time trying to slash or bite through that hard armor. Heck, if Damien manages to get a hold of him with his jaws, he can just rag him like a chew toy. However, Basilisk does have one thing that is advantageous against Damien, and that is intelligence. Now, in regards of the intelligence of Tyrannosaurus in terms of what is found at least, Tyrannosaurus is speculated to be exceptionally intelligent, equipped with the macaque or baboon-like cognition. However, this is considered to be outdated, with new research speculating that the intelligence of Tyrannosaurus was most likely more similar to reptiles such as crocodiles. And it seems to be the case because the new research seems to debunk the idea that Tyrannosaurus Rex was as intelligent as primates. However, that's not a bad thing, as crocodiles are considered to be highly intelligent than all of the other reptiles, although they don't necessarily have an IQ. Meanwhile, chimpanzees are considered to be one of the most intelligent animals in the world, with their intellect being almost as close as ours. And since chimpanzee DNA mostly contributes intelligence from my hybrid, that would mean that Basilisk would most likely outsmart Damien. The way I see it, Basilisk would most likely put himself in the front and await for Damien to strike him. However, just in that moment, Basilisk would dodge his strike and then retaliate with his own strike, either a headbutt with a horn or a tail strike with the Veganizer weapon. A strike from Basilisk's horn would definitely help to disorient Damien, and as for the Veganizer weapon, that one could be a bit more fatal if the spikes literally bury themselves in the skin of Damien, especially if they hit him in the face. Either disoriented or distracted by the pain, Basilisk could take this opportunity to attack him by biting him in his more vulnerable parts that aren't exactly hard. Probably his neck, his small arms, and possibly legs. With enough bites and with the iron-coated teeth passing through the hard scales of Damien, it could cause severe bleeding damage, which could be problematic for Damien. Heck, if we want to be literal, if Damien is disoriented, Basilisk could take this opportunity to get around him, stand on his two legs, and then put his front legs on his back, and potentially slash his back with his long claws. Even though the Dominion Giga is pretty durable with his hard scales, keep in mind that he did die from getting impaled by the long claws of the Fairy Sinusaurus. In fact, there's even scenes of the Fairy Sinusaurus slashing the Giga with his claws, which actually did get him to roar in pain a little bit. Now, in the original video, when I first created Basilisk, I did ask the question if Basilisk could stand on his two back legs despite the size. And for the sake of this hybrid face-off, I'm gonna say that he can do it. I know this may sound a bit hard to believe, but keep in mind that if the Komodo dragon, one of the largest lizards to exist now, can do it, and that if Megalena also did it when it faced off against rival, then I don't see how Basilisk can do it either. Besides, monitor lizards and even the Komodo dragon fight standing up by literally slamming each other and trying to push the other to the ground. Which could lead to another fight scenario with Basilisk standing on his two back legs to probably intimidate Damien, or at least attempt to intimidate him. But if that doesn't work, then if Damien were to get close to him, then Basilisk will close the gap and then literally use his jaws and claws to literally attack him. Now, returning to Basilisk's tactic of him getting around Damien, standing on his two back legs and then putting his front legs on Damien's back, would that mean that Basilisk will be able to push Damien to the ground? I don't think so. Given that the contributor for Damien's leg muscles is literally a sauropod, I don't think Basilisk would have enough strength to actually push Damien to the ground, even though that would have been cool. Now, with all that said, what do I think the outcome of the fight would end up becoming? Honestly, it's probably going to be a 50-50 for both combatants. Damien does have superior armor and weaponry compared to those of Basilisk and could easily kill him. However, Basilisk does have superior intelligence, which he could use to outsmart Damien and then strike him in his most vulnerable parts. But either way, this confrontation could end with one or the other winning, by either killing the enemy or just scaring them off. And if I have to imagine the scenario, it would most likely be a fight for a carcass. And knowing how Komodo dragons hack towards each other, Basilisk would most likely be the one attempting to steal a carcass from Damien. Alright, that was the first round of Hybrid Face-Off. Now let's go to the second one, and this one might be a bit more challenging for Basilisk. Alright, so here we have a much more, I should say, difficult opponent for Basilisk to face off. This is Bene, a hybrid that was created by Goji Headquarters. Actually, before proceeding, I want to give a huge shout out to Goji Headquarters, mainly for having Basilisk actually fight someone in the form of Belis, his own reptilian hybrid, and also including Basilisk in the Hybrid Alliance, which honestly I am very grateful. It's nice to see that despite not making it into the final 16 results, Basilisk still has some recognition at least. So to understand how powerful Bene is, we need to take a look at his contributors. So far there's Triceratops for the base form, African Wild Dog for the long legs and the large lumps which are efficient for stamina, Bowhead Whale for the size, Ankylosaurus for armor as well as the club tail, Pangolin for also armor as well as the strong claws, Halosaurus Ginmatsini, sorry if I butchered that, for something called gastralia and a barrel-shaped ribcage, and lastly Troodon for intelligence. All of this combined results to a creature that stands 15 feet tall, weighs 44 or 50 tons, with a max of 65 tons, and has a length of 25 feet long. So if I'm not wrong, Bene is almost the same height as Samson, which actually makes sense since he was created to fight Samson. So, in a similar fashion to Damien, Bene has superior armor and superior weaponry to those of Basilisk. Honestly, getting impaled by those horns or receiving a huge club on the face would certainly be fatal and would definitely kill Basilisk. It doesn't help that with his size, all Bene needs is one hit and that's it for Basilisk. Basilisk doesn't really have any way of dealing damage to Bene due to his armor. The only part where Basilisk could take a bite of Bene or his feet, as they seem to be not covered by armor. However, we reach a similar problem to Samson. Given how big Bene is, it's most likely that a bite won't be enough to seriously damage him. And what about the venom? Well, given how big Bene is, it's most likely that just like Samson, his metabolism might reject the venom. Then again, a Komodo dragon can kill a full-grown water buffalo with its own venom. And apparently the venom of the king cobra is extremely deadly towards elephants. So the claim that Samson's size would help him resist the venom of Indom 2.0 is a bit less believable when you take that into consideration. So this could mean that Basilisk could finish the fight against Bene with just one bite. However, it is a risky attempt. However, despite what it looks, it seems like Bene actually has a weakness. So here is a comment that was posted in the original video introducing Bene. And it basically states that Bene's own weight would be problematic for him, as he would be too heavy for his short body length and height. So in other words, there's a chance that Bene might actually be slow, which could be advantageous for Basilisk, meaning that he could quickly bite him without receiving any issues. Although whether the slowness of his own weight would also affect his head along with his horns and his tail is a bit unclear. So what do I think of the outcome of this confrontation? Honestly, Bene most likely wins this one. His armor is way too hard to penetrate, and his weapons are essentially more deadlier than those of Basilisk, which could definitely risk his death. The only way for Basilisk to even beat him is to take a bite out of him and inject his venom. But whether the venom actually works or not, because again, it's not clear what is said about, because again, huge size apparently rejects the venom, but an elephant can die through the venom of a king cobra. That one I don't understand. So honestly, that outcome with the venom is unknown at this point. But even so, trying to bite the feet of Bene is extremely risky, as Basilisk could end up receiving a tail club in the face or getting impaled by his horns. Granted, there's the comment in Bene's video that states that his weight would most likely be problematic for him and that Bene could potentially be slow. But does that slowness also reach the head and the tail? That's what I want to know as well. But either way, this confrontation ends with Bene most likely winning, though that depends if the venom actually works on him or not. Alright, that was all for that round. Now let's move on to the last round of this first part of Hybrid Face-Off. And this time, Basilisk would be faced with by far his biggest challenge yet. Alright, what we have here isn't a simple hybrid. It's a monster. This is Zemata, an hybrid that was created by AcnoGoji, who he submitted to the Sky Hybrid World that was launched by Zane Reborn. Now, you must be wondering, how is this going to be a huge challenge for Basilisk? Well, why don't we take a look at the contributors, shall we? So these are the contributors of Zemata. Golden Eagle for the base genome, Quetzalcoatlus for the wings, Utah Raptor for the legs, Stegosaurus for the tail, Sarcosuchus for the hardened scales, Peregrine Falcon for the lungs, Vasuki Indicus for the size, a Venom combo from both the Komodo Dragon and the Black Mamba, and finally, human DNA. Wait, what? Human DNA? And that contributes intelligence for this hybrid? Okay then, let's just keep moving forward with it. All of this combined, you got a creature that is 50 feet tall, 50 feet long, with a wingspan of 52 feet long when it's closed, and 72 feet long when it's open. Yeah, so literally we got a creature that is straight out of Skull Island. Now you must be wondering, how in the world is Basilisk going to take down such a titanic monster? Well, the answer is simple. He doesn't need to. Because Zemata is literally the most unfunctional hybrid I've seen in the internet so far. It's literally the flying version of Hank 1.0. However, instead of explaining how Basilisk is going to win against Zemata, I'll play teacher for a little bit and explain why Zemata just doesn't work for realism. Especially since he actually made a reaction on the video that featured Zemata, although he didn't quite take the result too kindly to the point that he ranted and tried to explain why Zemata was functional, even though it isn't functional. So I'll give a detailed explanation on how Zemata just doesn't work, because, let's be real, all of the contributors that I literally said that contributes to Zemata just really don't help her in this situation. Now, it shouldn't take long for my assistant to get here with the information that I need for this section. Ah, there she is. So, Jane, got the information? Ooh, nice. Alright, let's get this over with. Let's begin with the obvious problem with Zemata. She cannot fly. No matter how hard you try to put it, Zemata is incapable of flying. Especially when a lot of her contributors are literally the reason why she's grounded. Despite having the base form of the Golden Eagle, for whatever reason Zemata has the wings of Quetzalcoatlus. And yeah, no, they don't look like this. This is how the wings of Quetzalcoatlus look like. And taking into account how different the wings of a pterosaur are from those of a bird of prey, I don't think she would even be able to fly with those wings, especially when eagles and Quetzalcoatlus had very different ways of flying. Apparently, and according to Acno in the reaction video, he says that Zemata can bend her wings, which I'm guessing he's talking about closing the wings like how a lot of birds basically do it, which, okay, I'll give you that. But here is my question. Can she wind walk with those wings? Pterosaurs are special for having the ability to not only fly with those wings, but also use them for walking. And in the case of Quetzalcoatlus, it would definitely be helpful given how this is the largest pterosaur to ever exist. And those wings, aside from being used for flight, would definitely be helpful for keeping it upright and sustaining its large weight. The design doesn't seem to reflect that at all. I mean, it doesn't help that the head looks like a raptor and not an eagle. Since the base genome is literally a bird, I don't think giving it a different pairs of wings from a different creature would be a good idea. The congruity here is practically not congruent. Oh, and speaking of raptor, why don't we move next to the other contributor, those being the legs, which apparently come from Utahraptor. Utahraptor is a curious case, to say the least, as there seems to be a bit of a debate about whether this thing is actually fast or not. However, one thing that seems to be agreed on is that Utahraptor, being the largest of the Dromaeosaurus, wouldn't be exactly good at jumping or pouncing. However, just because Utahraptor was the largest of the raptors, doesn't mean that it would be a good contributor. Raptors have legs that are specifically specialized for running down their prey and for agility. A raptor that was around the same size of a T-Rex would definitely have a hard time getting around because its legs are not specialized for sustaining that much weight. And that's the problem with Zemata. Given that she's literally 50 feet tall, her legs will literally not be able to sustain that much weight. Legs that are specialized for fast movement would not be able to lift a larger body like this. Therefore, they will most likely break from the weight, and therefore Zemata would be grounded permanently. Oh, but it gets even worse with Zemata's downfall when you look at its tail. And be honest with me, when you look at a tail like this, are you not questioning the fact, how the hell is this thing going to move with that? Birds have tail feathers that help them in balance while flying. What the hell is Zemata doing with this? There's literally no congruity in this for two reasons. One, Zemata would have no idea what he would do with it, since there is no bird in the world that has been documented having a tail like this. And 2, that's too much weight on her. The tail of the Stegosaurus would literally be too much for Zemata to even take off, so she'll be even more grounded. Combining those with the hard scales of Sarcosuchus, she's now become way too heavy to fly. Like she wouldn't even be able to fly. Like the lungs of the peregrine falcon are just useless at this point because this thing is incapable of flying. So me bringing up this information about how the lungs of the peregrine falcon work is useless. And bringing up the venom is also useless because she literally cannot use them in flight. Though I will say, Acno, you gotta choose one or the other because there's no animal in the world that has 2 types of venom. But even if you choose one or the other, she wouldn't be able to use that venom because of her beak, which wouldn't exactly allow any room for venom glands. Oh, but it's time to get on the cherry on the top with this hybrid. So, according to Acno, this thing is 50 feet tall and 50 feet long. And the contributor for that factor is Vasuki indicus, a snake that was recently discovered and thought to be much bigger than Titanoboa. To that I say,
what kind of joke is that?
Yeah, no. I absolutely do not believe that Vasuki indicus that approximately measured 49 feet would allow Zemata to reach titanic proportions. If I'm not mistaken, the blue whale is currently considered to be the largest animal to ever exist. And honestly, that contributor would make much more sense than a freaking snake. Even though it would still pretty much backfire since, honestly, giving out Titanic Zemata is, now she's literally grounded forever. And she can no longer fly. Actually, not that she can no longer fly. She can't fly. She cannot do it whatsoever. Also, I don't think Acno took this into consideration because, while yes, Vasuki indicus might be the largest snake to ever exist, it was also the longest snake to exist. So there might be some side effects when you take that into consideration. And that side effect would be Zemata having her entire body stretched like a spaghetti noodle, which would definitely not be efficient for flight. And it's not even the most ridiculous aspect of Zemata. The most ridiculous aspect of Zemata is the fact that she has human DNA. And to that I say...
Are you stupid?
Now I know what Acno is gonna say. He changed the contributor to something else. To that I say it was already too late, because Zane literally used your original sketch, which literally writes intelligence and endurance of a human. Even so, the fact that Zane had no idea about this is pretty concerning. Also, apparently the reason he added human DNA to his hybrid is because it was not mentioned in the rules of the Sky Hybrid War. Dude, there's a thing called common sense. Like, seriously, it doesn't matter if it wasn't written in the rules. Literally no hybrid in the entire internet has ever been mentioned or established to have human DNA. Like, come on! Also, are you sure that you changed that contributor? Because this comment of yours that was posted in the same video that features Zemata says otherwise. Also, did you not watch the Hall of Shame video from Goji Center's original hybrid war? Because a lot of hybrids were literally included there for literally having human DNA. Heck, Primatus Rex was literally included on top 1 of the Hall of Shame ranking for literally being a human kaiju hybrid. What's also ironic is that in the Hall of Shame video, there's literally an hybrid that has literally the same problems as Zemata. So that should tell you that he did not watch the video. So long story short, this thing is unfunctional and does not work realistically. And the thing is, before and even after he submitted the hybrid to the tournament, we tried explaining to him why Zemata just didn't work realistically and why the contributors just didn't help her out basically. We even tried to give him some advice about how he could fix Zemata and basically update her so that she becomes more functional. And well, at the end, basically all of our advices were practically ignored. And at the end of the day, Zemata isn't really a regular hybrid. It's a chimera at this point. She's a chimera that was practically doomed from the start and just died from starvation in the fact that she was grounded forever. However, despite everything that I said, Zemata actually has a chance of actually working realistically. And for that, we gotta take a look at an interpretation that was done by the artist Vampdcon. And here is our art interpretation of a more functional Zemata. Gotta say, this interpretation of Zemata looks absolutely stunning. And with that pink coloration, Zemata, you're welcome on the Pink Club along with Evolved Godzilla as the CEO. Real men were pink. But anyways, Vamp basically did a good job in making Zemata look realistic and also functional. I mean, from the start, you can see that she is standing upwards. And that's because she's actually using the Quetzalcoatl's wings to actually support her weight, which actually is more efficient here. According to Vamp, the base genome of this Zemata seemed to be a mixture of both bird and pterosaur. And yeah, I can definitely see that, which, yeah, that probably is a better option instead of just choosing one of the animals for the base genome. The tail is still from Stegosaurus, but she omitted the amount of DNA of that factor so that it wouldn't be too heavy and Zemata could still fly. However, she had an interesting idea about how this tail could be used as a way to attract mates, basically in a similar fashion to birds of paradise, which I think is pretty neat. Although, in my opinion, I think that a tail like this should be still removed, since it doesn't really help the hybrid in terms of flight and balance. But seeing how Vamp managed to figure out something interesting with that feature, I think that's pretty neat. In terms of the legs, they are basically this now, which I think is definitely way better. On the one hand, she has her eagle legs, which are also accompanied with sharp talons, which are way more efficient for grappling rather than just putting the legs of a raptor in there. But also, speaking of the raptor, thanks to the DNA of Gojiraptor, she also obtains a sickle claw, which makes the grappling and the sharpness of these talons even more efficient. In terms of the other contributors, Vamp didn't mention them to me, which I'm led to believe that the other contributors from Zemata were completely removed. And you know what? That's definitely for the best, because Sarcosuchus, Vasuki Indicus, Komodo Dragon, Black Mamba, and even the Peregrine Falcon, those contribute absolutely nothing now for this new version of Zemata. Especially human DNA, because come on, there were other animals that you could use for intelligence. I mean, aside from the chimpanzee, which now looking back, it's a bit of an overrated pick, you could have chosen the crow, because aside from being a bird which would be more congruent for your hybrid, the crow is one of the most intelligent birds in the world, so I don't know, that seemed like a better pick than human if I'm being honest. Now, in terms of size, this is how I would imagine this new version of Zemata being like. Like, this is how I see this new version of Zemata in terms of size, which I think is pretty good. I mean, I don't know the stats that I can say, but honestly, I think that's a pretty good size for this new Zemata. And obviously, the contributor for its size, it's obviously Quetzalcoatl's. Now, funny enough, I first thought that Zemata in this size would be around the same height as Quetzalcoatl's, but after doing some research, it turns out that Quetzalcoatl's was a lot taller than that. But honestly, I think that's the best you can reach in terms of size. Now, does it mean that the new Zemata is way smaller than the original Zemata? Yes, but realistically, the new Zemata works much more better than the old one. Especially since a bird being 50 feet tall is just very impossible. Like, there is no documented case of a bird being this big. And no, we're not counting mythical birds like the roc or the thunderbird. Those are mythical creatures, so they don't count. But yeah, that's pretty much all I've got to say about Zemata. And hopefully it will be the last time I get to say it because Acno, if you're watching this video, which I know you will, now do you understand what I, along with everyone else, has been trying to tell you in regards of Zemata? And you know what? If by the end of your reaction, because I know you will react to this video, you still think that Zemata is still functional, even after going through extreme details explaining why Zemata just doesn't work, if you still think that Zemata works, I'm done. I give up. I'm not gonna bother with this. At this point, no, I'm done. I'm not gonna keep repeating myself. I'm not gonna go on and say again and again something that Zane Reborn, the judges, myself and other people have been trying to tell you, and you're just not gonna listen. No, I'm done. I'm not gonna bother with this. This is the last time I cover this freaking hybrid, and I'm just gonna say this one last time. Zemata does not functionally work. I'm gonna say it one more time. Zemata does not functionally work. Alright, exaggeration aside, we've now reached the end of the video, and gotta say, I had a great time working on this video. This is by far the best analysis I've made so far on this channel. Watching people pit creatures against each other is honestly something that I've always found myself enjoying in terms of content when I get around watching them. Especially since I think the best part for me in terms of these types of content is the analysis. Like, I like how people go over like what these creatures bring to the table and what they could use against their opponent, and that sort of stuff is always something that I find pretty intriguing, and honestly kind of makes the fight even more entertaining. And it was something that I basically wanted to do for this first part of Hybrid Face-Off. And after doing all of that, I now wish someone actually made an actual fight scenario with these hybrids. Now, in the beginning of this video, I said that this little mini-series would eventually be 2 parts. Well, now that has been changed to 3 parts now. And the reason for this is because, well, in this first part I only talked about 3 hybrids. And since there's 9 hybrids, doing the calculation, 3 plus 3 plus 3 equals 9. So yeah, there will be 2 more parts of this hybrid face-off. Well, I'll talk about 3 other hybrids and see if Basilisk could win against them. And in terms of the last session, when I was talking about Zemata, don't take this session way too seriously, especially since I was mostly exaggerating my reaction a lot. Instead, see this section more as educational, like as a lesson for anyone who wants to create an hybrid. Because I'll be honest with you guys, creating an hybrid is not easy. And I know that because when it came to like creating Basilisk, it was not easy on the first go. However, I think that if you guys follow these 3 steps, honestly, you could create an hybrid without encountering any difficulties. And if you're wondering what those 3 steps are, I'm gonna tell you guys. Firstly, there's congruity. Basically, you take a deep and good look at the contributors and see what these contributors contribute to your hybrid. If you see that there's something that this contributor could work out for your hybrid, then you use it. However, if it doesn't work out for your hybrid, then you don't use it. Especially when you need to take into account the behavior and the way the contributor for the main genome works. So essentially, you have to pick a contributor that kinda helps the main genome to basically upgrade its features and basically make it more efficient for combat. The next step is realism, which I won't deny is a pretty frustrating process to go through, but unfortunately that's something that you need to take into consideration, especially since you're not creating a fictional creature like a kaiju or something like that. You're creating an animal that is meant to exist in our world. So you gotta take the realistic aspect into consideration, especially when you're creating an hybrid. And also because, well, realism has been a thing since the creation of Indom 2.0, so there's that. And also, if you don't take into consideration realism, then in the end you're just gonna create something that just doesn't work and might just die on day one, and that can only work in fiction. Like, for example, Zemata, the original Zemata, was so unfunctional that at this point you might as well call her a dragon and put her in a fantasy-like universe, because that's the only way for her to exist. And finally, the third and last step, research. Google is literally going to be your friend in this one, because if you want to know more about the contributors that you pick and the abilities that could help out for your hybrid, then do that. Use Google for your research. Now, be careful where you go, because not everything is right in terms of what you could find in terms of source. But for that factor, you gotta use a lot of research when it comes to like choosing a contributor and then using it correctly for your hybrid. Just don't use AI, because as we all know, AI is certainly not reliable for that. And I guess one last thing to say in regards of that, if people give you advices in regards of your hybrid, actually take these advices in consideration. Don't be an entitled jerk, or don't be biased in regards of like your creation, because that's just gonna make you look just dumb, especially when you created something that is not functional. Actually listen to people and hear out what they have to say, because what they can say can actually help you in upgrading your hybrid. I want to give a huge shout out to all of the creators of the hybrids that have been mentioned in this video. Madly Mesozoic, Gojira Man, Dinosaur King 999, GMR, Creature Archives, Gojirex, Goji Headquarters, and AcnoGoji 2. You guys have some of the most unique and most creative hybrids out there, and they're just the best. Like, they're the best hybrids in my opinion. Well, mine is Zemata, but I'll give her that she does have a cool design for a dragon. Oh, and speaking of Goji Headquarters, here's something unexpected that just happened just recently. So remember when I said that Goji Headquarters basically made a video featuring Basilisk against his own reptilian hybrid? Well, Goji Headquarters proceeded to give away that hybrid to other people along with other hybrids that he had. And guess where Basilisk is right now? That's right. Basilisk has been given away to me, and I now have her in my hybrid collection. It's a little bit ironic when I think about it. Like, I literally have an hybrid that was purposely designed to fight Basilisk, and here she is in the same facility with Basilisk. And whether they get along or not, that's for me to see. But yeah, I have Basilisk in my collection, and I'll take very good care of her. Unfortunately, the original video of the two fighting in Goji Headquarters channel is either deleted or privated, so it's no longer there, but I did manage to take a screenshot before he deleted or privated that video. And here are the contributors of Basilisk, if you're curious. Oh, and one last thing before I end this video. I want to give a huge shout out to my good friend on Discord, Dr. Conjura, who made this very awesome avatar for me. If you have been on my channel for quite some time now, you have been noticing that I've been changing avatars from video to video. From Gojirasaurus to Varen to Final Goji, although only when it's a different art style and not the suit, to Monsterverse Goji, and to Evolve Godzilla now. And while this new avatar is still Evolve Godzilla, Conjura added a little touch by giving it a cape, which is actually a reference to older avatar that I had in Neos' channel when we did the Kenshin Chaos breakdown, and it shows Godzilla from My Hero Academia for my avatar. So yeah, that's a pretty cool. It's a pretty cool nod to that earlier avatar. And honestly, with this new avatar, I really wanna use it on my channel now. Though I'll have to see with him if we can get around having the design 2 different poses. So yeah. Oh, and also, shout out to Vampdcon for the art of Zemata. Great stuff. But yeah, that's pretty much all I've got to say. I'm the Godzilla Reader, and I'll see you guys in the next video. And before saying my closing line, I'll leave you with a little sneak peek of the next part of Hybrid Face Off. So yeah, bye bye!